Welcome to the deep dive. You're likely here because you want to get to the heart of things, find those aha moments without, drowning in information.
That's exactly what we aim for.
And today, we're looking at a text you sent over from Islam Decrypted.
Yeah.
It tackles something I think everyone experiences, worrying about the future.
Right. It's a universal thing. So our mission today is to really unpack the perspective offered in this specific text about why we get anxious about what's coming and how that's viewed within this particular context.
Okay, let's dive in. The text starts by pointing out how much headspace, future concerns seem to take up for so many people.
Yeah, it says securing the future, trying to make things better down the road. It's become like a primary focus.
Almost this constant background noise, this worry about what the next day brings, the unpredictability of it all.
And it shapes our thoughts, our conversations, even how we talk with family, apparently.
What struck me was how specific the examples get. It's not just vague unease.
No, not at all. It lists things like the rising cost of living, worrying about your kids after you're gone.
Right, and even really specific future worries, like daughters facing divorce or becoming widows, even before they're married.
Exactly. And it doesn't stop there. It mentions fears about getting sick, maybe not being able to move around.
The sadness of friends passing away as you get older.
And even imagining your own kids might end up ungrateful after all you've done. It's quite a detailed picture of, anticipatory anxiety.
It really lays out how our minds can just spin, trying to predict and control all these potential futures.
And this is where the text offers its main interpretation. It suggests this kind of, excessive worry isn't just personality.
Okay, so what does it attribute it to?
It links it to something deeper. A weakness of faith and ill regard for God. That's the phrasing used.
That's a strong statement. And it brings in a Quranic verse to back this up, right?
Yes, the translation provided is. And another group has been preoccupied with themselves, thinking of a law other than the truth, the thought of ignorance, saying, is there for us any share in the matter? Say, indeed, the affair belongs wholly to Allah.
So how does the text connect that verse to everyday worry?
Well, the interpretation presented is that this intense focus on the future, the fear of change and uncertainty, it signals a kind of distance from God.
A distance. Almost like the thought of ignorance mentioned in the verse.
Exactly. It likens it to the mindset of jahiliyyah, which sort of means a state of being without divine guidance. The argument is that if you're constantly consumed by future worries, it implies you don't fully trust God's plan or his knowledge.
So it's like trying to manage everything yourself because you're not fully relying on that higher power, that divine decree.
Precisely. It suggests this constant fretting actually undermines trust, reliance, and belief in God's decree and knowledge.
Okay. And the text then links this inner state of worry to our emotions, doesn't it?
It does. It introduces a quote from Ibn Masud, who was a companion of the Prophet Muhammad.
What does he say?
The quote is, "Indeed, Allah, in his justice and fairness, has placed ease and joy in contentment and certainty, and has placed worry and sadness in discontent."
Let's unpack that. So the text is basically saying contentment and certainty, especially having good expectations of God, leads to inner peace.
That's the idea, inner peace, joy. And the flip side is that discontent, negative expectations, they naturally breed worry and sadness.
And it mentions this having consequences beyond just how we feel now, right? Even on the day of judgment.
Yes, that implication is there too. It
Yeah.
really emphasizes this link between our internal outlook, our faith, and our lived emotional experience.
It suggests our perspective really shapes our reality in a way.
Definitely. Then the text shifts gears slightly, exploring where these feelings might come from. It introduces a concept called lama.
Lama, what does that mean?
It's explained as a sort of nearness or closeness. The text says both Satan and angels have a lama with humans. This idea is also attributed to Ibn Masud and found in Tirmidhi, a major collection of hadith.
Okay, so influences, positive and negative.
Exactly. And it contrasts them quite starkly. Satan's lama, his influence, is described as promising hardship, poverty, fear.
Instilling those anxieties we talk about.
Precisely. Fear of hardship, fear of death, worries about kids going astray. The text says the goal is to make you disbelieve in God's decree, to shake your faith.
So it's like whispering those what ifs, you'll lose your money, you'll get sick, your kids will reject you, playing on fundamental fears.
Right. But then there's the angel's lama.
The positive influence.
Yes, that brings promises of good, it affirms truth, it leads to optimism and, again, positive expectations of God.
Making you feel hopeful.
The text even links this to the Prophet Muhammad's own liking for optimism, which is called fala.
So two opposing poles on our thoughts about the future. One towards fear, the other towards hope.
That's the framework presented. And the advice given is pretty straightforward.
What's the advice?
If you feel that positive inclination, that sense of hope, recognize it's from God, be thankful. But if you feel those negative, anxious thoughts taking over,
Assume it's the other influence.
that's the suggestion. It's from Satan, so seek refuge in God. Turn towards him.
Right. And there's another Quranic verse brought in here, too.
Yes, to reinforce this, Satan threatens you with poverty and orders you to immorality, while Allah promises you forgiveness from him and bounty. And Allah is all-encompassing and knowing.
So it ties that fear-mongering directly to Satan, contrasting it with God's promise of forgiveness and bounty.
Exactly. It underlines the idea that these anxieties can be exploited to lead people astray.
Now, something I was wondering, and I bet listeners might be too, does all this focus on trust mean you're just supposed to sit back and do nothing, just wait for things to happen?
That's a really important question, and the text anticipates it. It explicitly says, no, that's not the message.
Okay, so it doesn't discourage planning or effort.
Not at all. It uses the phrase, o iosal, basically, taking the means, putting in the effort. The text states that doing this, taking practical steps, is actually part of trusting in God.
Ah, so it's not faith versus action.
No, it's faith expressed through action, in a sense. You do your part, what's within your ability, while maintaining that underlying trust in the bigger picture, in God's support.
That's a critical clarification. It's about integration, not opposition.
Right. But then the text issues a warning.
Which is?
The danger of letting that natural concern for the future spiral into an obsession that might push someone towards actions that are forbidden.
Okay, so crossing lines because of anxiety.
Yeah. And it gives concrete examples again. Resorting to injustice, maybe theft, aggression, cheating people financially, embezzlement.
All driven by this overwhelming need to feel secure about the future.
That's the warning, that this anxiety can become a justification for harmful actions.
And it's not just about, say, financial dealings, right? It mentions neglecting religious duties, too.
Absolutely. Things like neglecting prayer or not paying zakat, the obligatory charity, or putting off the Hajj pilgrimage.
Or even just holding back from doing good deeds because you feel you need to hoard resources for your own future.
Exactly. Using securing the future as an excuse to fall short on your obligations or ethical principles now.
So the real danger zone is when future worry makes you compromise your integrity or your faith in the present.
That's the core message of the warning. Find the balance. Don't let fear drive you off course.
Okay, so wrapping up this deep dive, the text from Islam Decrypted really presents a specific lens on future anxiety. It sees it as a major human tendency.
And interprets that excessive worry within its religious framework as possibly rooted in weak faith, maybe negative assumptions about God's plan.
We saw how it contrasts that with encouraging optimism, trust, and linking contentment with peace.
And also acknowledging those potential negative influences that might amplify our fears.
And critically clarifying that trust doesn't mean passivity. Taking action is important.
But warning strongly against letting anxiety become an excuse for doing wrong or neglecting duties.
It definitely gives you a lot to think about.
It does. Which leads to maybe a final thought for our listeners to chew on.
Go ahead.
Considering these perspectives, how do you strike that balance? How do you engage in responsible, necessary planning for the future?
Which we all have to do, to some extent.
Right. How do you do that while also cultivating a genuine sense of trust, contentment, and just being present right here, right now?
Finding that equilibrium between preparing for tomorrow and living faithfully today, that's definitely something worth reflecting on. How do your own future anxieties sit with these ideas?
A good question to ponder.
Thanks for exploring that with us today.